Saturday, September 14th, 11 to 6. Substantial savings up to 70% off. Serenoni Warehouse Sales, Saturday, September 14th. Details, visit serenoni.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Sunny but windy and smoky this afternoon with a high of 92. Tomorrow will be much cooler. The smoke's going to stick around that high 70. Right now, smoky skies 88 degrees. I'm Becky Bruce from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the headlines today, of course, are all about the debate from last night. A lot of analysis paralysis going on in terms of who said what and who didn't and why and what it means. And ultimately, what does it mean in a very tight election where the poll numbers at the surface seem like we're pretty much in a dead heat? As always, we want to get beyond the headlines and get underneath those numbers to see what's really going on. So we're going to have a conversation with one of the pioneers in modern polling, counter-polling specifically, so we can think again about what we think we know when it comes to the campaign. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is always a good day on Inside Sources when we are joined by Scott Rasmussen. Of course, Scott Rasmussen, president of RMG Research, leads the Neapolitan Institute, and is someone that I always look to get beyond the numbers, underneath the numbers, and really get to the heart and soul, the voice of the American people and what's really going on. And Scott joins us on the line from somewhere in America today. Scott, welcome back to the show.
Boy, it's always great to be with you. I am in Ohio today. There's a Senate race going on here, but everybody's just talking about that debate from last night.
So as you kind of get a feel and flavor for what's going on underneath those numbers, again, a lot of people saying, well, did it move the needle last night? Did it move the needle?
No. But I think that's a bad expectation. Look, I gave a speech in Ohio last night just before the debate, and I told the audience that, first of all, about 4 out of 10 Americans didn't even know the debate was scheduled. Only 29% were planning to watch, and it was not a case where these people were going to be carefully studying issue positions of the two candidates before deciding how they would vote. The way I explained it last night was it's like an Ohio State-Michigan football game. You don't go there to see which team you like. You go there to cheer for your team. And the audience last night was cheering for Trump or cheering for Harris. And I think the Harris team should feel really good. She certainly exceeded the basic objective of appearing to be a credible candidate for president of the United States. She got a lot of her points out. She got under Donald Trump's skin. She forced him to talk about side issues. And she also managed to avoid answering any questions on topics that could get her in trouble. So all in all, that was a good performance. Donald Trump didn't have as strong a debate. He did get distracted talking about side issues. He had a strong finish, though, with his theme about she talks about all these things she's going to do. She's been in office 3.5 years. Why haven't they happened? And when all is said and done, it wouldn't surprise me to see Vice President Harris get a slight bounce in the polls, but a slight and temporary bounce. I don't think really anything's changed. I said before the debate, the race was a pure toss-up, and that's the way it looks today.
Yeah. So as you look at that moving forward and in some of your counter-polling to, again, kind of get beyond the obvious questions that all the other pollsters in America seem to be just fixated on, what are you hearing underneath that may be that differentiator or that tipping point for either of these candidates as we march our way towards the first Tuesday of November?
Well, the first thing is to remember the great wisdom of James Carville. It's the economy, stupid. That is still the issue that drives people, and the way we look at that, excuse me, is how people feel about their personal finances. Right now, they're not feeling very good, but maybe they're getting a little bit less pessimistic. The more the personal financial stress eases, the more that gets a little bit of a boost for the Harris campaign. On the other hand, the biggest threats to Vice President Harris outside of the economy going in the other direction involve outside events. Campus protests come to mind. You know, if there's a campus protest that gets a little violent or perhaps blocks Jewish students from going to class, she will have to take a position on it that is going to alienate some parts of her base, and it could be decisive in a swing state like Michigan. But we're at the point in the campaign where I think the things that most political people talk about aren't the ones that are going to have the impact. It'll be something, an offhand comment, or it might just come down to who has a better organization. But it is remarkably close, closer than any election I've seen.
Yeah. So as you march your way that direction, and again, it's going to be probably those 7 toss-up states, swing states that we continue to look at: Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan. Are there any in there that you're keeping a particular eye on, or any issues within those states that seem to be bubbling up a little bit in terms of importance?
The biggest state is Pennsylvania. Whoever wins Pennsylvania is going to have a tremendous advantage going forward. And the second biggest of the swing states is Georgia. You know, if either candidate wins both of them, they've got the election wrapped up. And interestingly, of course, they're both in the eastern part of the U.S., so if we're lucky, we might even get to go to sleep at a good time on election night. But in Georgia, Harris is hoping on the large minority population, the large black population coming out to vote in bigger numbers. The Republican campaign is trying to overcome what was a very bitter feud between Donald Trump and Governor Kemp. And from all indications that I hear, Governor Kemp's team is all in, which is probably very good news for the Trump campaign. I don't want to say that they have an advantage there, but it's maybe a very slight edge. Pennsylvania is sort of amazing to me in that, you know, first of all, it's got 2 major cities, and the rest of the state is very rural. In 2016, President Trump won not by flipping counties, but by boosting turnout unbelievably in those rural communities compared to what Mitt Romney had done. He got more people to the polls and won a bigger margin in those counties. So the thing to be watching for in that state will be the turnout in some of those more rural counties. It appears the energy is there right now, but we'll see. And then the second thing, there may be, and this is one of those things, you don't know if it's a mirage, you don't know if you're overstating it, but there certainly was with Joe Biden, and maybe a lingering sense with Kamala Harris, a little bit of dissatisfaction within some segments of the black community in Philadelphia. Probably not going to yield a big vote in the city for Donald Trump, but even a slight decline in turnout in the city would be pretty significant. Yeah. And it seems to be centered around small business owners who are just being ravaged.
Yeah. Fascinating. One last question for you before I let you go, Scott. I know you got a plane to catch. As you look at the Harris campaign, they're clearly, if anyone has a little wind at their backs, even ever so slightly, I think it would be the vice president at this point. Yep. You've done some really fascinating polling around the elite 1% and kind of this disconnect between some of those in the upper echelons of society here in the U.S. and everyone else. And it seems to me if there was one area of potential weakness for the Harris campaign, it would be the disconnect between some of the things they want to tout in terms of the economy or things that they've done and what Americans are feeling around the kitchen table. What are you seeing in your counter-polling when it comes to that disconnect between kind of the Washington elite and the rest of the country?
Well, actually, let me start by a humorous example of it today. The New York Times had a story basically saying all the experts said Harris won big, and then they had some focus groups of undecided voters, and it didn't turn out the way they expected. So the disconnect is very real, especially if you think about those people who are if you are undecided right now, you're not certain if you're going to vote, you're not certain for which candidate you're going to vote for, they have very little in common with the elites who live and breathe politics. A lot of time, the elite response is to think, what can the government do to fix your problems? And a lot of these people thinking the government is my problem, the old Ronald Reagan perspective.
Yeah.
And I think there's always danger in that. And if, to put it in the way you asked the question, the danger for Vice President Harris might be something along the lines of not appreciating how out of sync some answers sound. Just a one issue example. First time we did a survey of the elite 1%, we interviewed 1,000 members of this elite world, and we asked the open-ended questions that we ask of all voters in every survey, which is just in their own words, what's the most important problem? Not a single member of the elite 1% mentioned immigration, border security. To voters, that's a huge issue. So there may be a sense in some of the elites or some of the people who are aligned with those elites in the Harris campaign who just don't quite get what's going on with the immigration issue. Now, I can go through that. Both campaigns have blind spots.
Yeah.
I think you're right to suggest the Harris campaign has a little wind at their back. They do have some changes, and the elite 1% mindset is a danger to her. But I don't want to pretend that there aren't similar dangers to the other side.
Absolutely, 100%. As always, perfect insight underneath the hood. Scott Rasmussen, best of the best, Napolitan Institute and president of RMG Research. Scott, always appreciate it. Thanks for making time on your way to the airport, and travel safely. We'll have you back soon.
Look forward to talking soon. Thanks, Boyd.
All right, that's Scott Rasmussen from the Napolitan Institute, and he's the pollster that I look to really get a sense of where are the American people, not where those who are asking questions and those sitting in think tanks and those sitting around boardrooms, but what's happening in the living rooms and around the kitchen table. Scott has an extraordinary ability to get to the heart of that, some really interesting insight, and there's a long, long way to go in this campaign. We're going to stay with the question and the conversation. We'll take one more look back in terms of the debate last night, some of the nuances, and most importantly, what comes next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Pumpkin spice, anyone? Autumn can mean tasty lattes, sure, but also BYU football, colder weather, and how about a little presidential election?
Rock the vote!
For all the spice you need this fall. Start with Tim and Amanda, mornings from 5 to 9. Then David DeGenovic, Boyd Matheson, and Jeff Kaplan's afternoon news as you drive home. Coming this fall on KSL News Radio.
Hi, Doug Wright, and when you're going out for a special occasion, you want to make sure that the ambiance is perfect, the food is absolutely prepared to perfection, and your service is superb. Well, you get all that at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. That's why when we're having a special event in our family, whether it's an anniversary, a birthday, or just a celebration of a graduation, whatever, we make sure to make a reservation at either Hotel Park City and Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, or the location in downtown Salt Lake City at 275 Southwest Temple. Nobody prepares a meal more beautifully and more deliciously than Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. This is the place where you can say exactly how you want your entree prepared. Let's talk steaks for a minute. Maybe you're a rare, maybe you're a medium rare, or a well done. They'll make sure that it's done just right at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
In 2024, dating is a disaster. We've been ghosted, breadcrumbed, stuck in situationships. Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm Caitlin. Welcome to our new podcast, Dating at Her Age. Dating has been so dicey for us, we asked KSL, can we launch an all-new podcast about it?
People use these dating apps. You're not really dating when you're on the dating app.
Dating at Her Age, brought to you by Mountain Home Services. A new episode drops every Thursday on KSLNewsRadio.com.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
Hi, welcome to Staples.
Hi, I hear Staples can print everything for my business.
Sure can.
And the quality is guaranteed?
Absolutely.
Plus, you'll beat any price quote. Is that right?
For sure.
How about this one?
We'll beat it.
Can you print menus, signs, and flyers?
Sure can.
How about blueprints?
No problem.
What about red prints?
Not a real thing.
What if they were?
We'd print them, and they'd look amazing.
Now at Staples, print more, save more. Up to $150 off your print purchase. Ends 11/2. Exclusions apply. Visit staples.com/print for offer details and staples.com/price match for in-store price match guarantee.
When it comes to our homes, stains in your carpet can be really frustrating. It can be easy to think you need harsh chemicals or detergents to get them out. But these always leave behind soapy residue, which ends up attracting more dirt to the area. That's why you should trust Zero-Res to get out tough stains and regularly clean your surfaces. Zero-Res uses ZR water to deeply clean carpets without any icky residue. Right now, mention KSL and get 3 rooms of carpet cleaning for just $109. Plus 20% off air duct cleaning. Book now at zerores.com.
Join Mike Stevens of Capital Wealth Advisors for Retire Right Radio, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. That's Retire Right Radio with Mike Stevens, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Becky Bruce. First, the case challenging a proposed constitutional amendment over ballot initiatives will be back in court this afternoon. Second, first responders here in Utah climbed the steps of America First Field this morning to commemorate those who lost their lives on 9/11. And third, housing affordability and Utah's growth are expected to be central issues in tonight's governor's debate at Salt Lake Community College. Airs live at KSL News Radio at 6. Right now, 88 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson. We're staying with the conversation as it relates to what's happening on the presidential election front, what took place last night. We'll dive into that. Of course, we just heard from Scott Rasmussen, one of the great pollsters, and really looking at this idea of the counter-polling. What's underneath all of those numbers, and how do you ask better questions to find out what's really going on with the American people? Polling's become a much more difficult thing over the last decade or so, and continues to be challenging in terms of predicting outcomes when it comes to elections. But there's a lot under there that we can really find out and understand. I will say in a great moment this morning that just shows how the country can always come together and always move forward when we choose to. So the night after a very fiery and very raucous debate between the Vice President, Kamala Harris, and former President Donald Trump, they were side by side with other members of their party, President Joe Biden. You had Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance. You had Chuck Schumer, the leader, Democratic leader in the Senate, and a host of others from our nation's capital, all standing side by side and shoulder to shoulder because it's 9/11. And it's a time to remember, and it's a time to come together. And it's time to reflect on the ways that we did come together as a nation following a horrific attack. And that's important for us to keep in mind, especially as we roll into the throes and the final run-up to the election in November, that when our leaders choose to come together, they can, and they actually do it quite well. We just need to see more of it. Now, we're going to come back to the theme of 9/11 as we close out the show today at 2:50, and you don't want to miss this. I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to do an interview with Kenneth Feinberg. And Kenneth Feinberg was tasked with really doing the valuation, as horrific as that sounds, on the lives that were lost in 9/11. There was a fund set up for those surviving family members from those that were lost on 9/11. And he had to go through and do the valuation. What is the value of a life? What is it worth? And so we'll come back to that conversation coming up at 2:50 today. You do not want to miss this. It's one of the most thought-provoking interviews that I've done. It made me completely rethink a whole host of things, and on 9/11, it's a good opportunity to go back and re-listen to that. So we'll do that at 2:50 today. When I look at the debate last night, which was really the opposite of what we saw in New York today at the Ground Zero site from 9/11, with people from across the political spectrum setting all of that aside for a moment to come together to reflect and to honor and to see what that vision looks like moving forward, and where have we come over the past 23 years, and have we done it right? What do we need to do better? Last night was anything but that. And so as you look at how everything played out, all the analysis is out there in terms of who did well, who did not. I think that that part is pretty interesting. But I want to get into a couple of the answers and why they were telling to me and what I thought was important about them. The opening question regarded the economy and the cost of living. And I think this may have been Mr. Trump's, one of his better moments, besides his close. We'll come back to that, where he talked about the record on the economy.
I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
So that was a strong moment for former President Trump, talking about the economy. Why? Because everyone in America feels that, and they recognize that. I thought Vice President Harris did a masterful job of distracting. She was the matador on stage last night. She baited, she goaded, and the former president took it on every turn. The one thing that was disappointing to me was the fact that she didn't spend nearly enough time as I would have wanted, as if I were an independent voter or an undecided voter who was watching, and that's really who this was for last night. Because I came out of the debate thinking, what do I know now about Kamala Harris that I didn't know going in? And what I came out knowing was that she knows a lot about former President Trump, and she has a lot to say about former President Trump looking backwards. But I didn't hear nearly enough in terms of what her policy actually is, what it actually means, what it will actually cost, and what it will actually do moving forward. So I think she missed an opportunity. I think she could have taken what I think most people are agreeing was a very strong performance. I think she won the debate. She did what she had to do in terms of showing that she was plausible, that she was credible, that she was strong. She did all of those things. She missed an opportunity, I think, to really close it out. Had she gone into more of a vision and a plan, she used the word plan a lot. She didn't describe much in the plan. And so I think that's where she kind of missed. Also interesting, just in one segment, she was asked a question about immigration and the border, which we just heard from Scott Rasmussen is really on the minds of a lot of Americans in a lot of those swing states. So she was asked the question specifically, do you wish you would have been stronger on border security before the last 6 months before the election? Should you have done more early? She didn't answer the question, and somehow she landed here.
And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you.
She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there. She can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
So the question was, should you have done more on border security? Her answer was, Mr. Trump is going to talk about immigration and the border every chance he gets tonight. But let's talk about who's coming to his rally and why they're leaving early. Now, on one hand, the moderators surely could have pushed back on that and didn't. And surely Mr. Trump could have resisted the urge to have a debate for the next 4 minutes about who comes to rallies. So again, that was another area where the weakness of the former president, not being restrained, not being able to let something go, was the cause of a lot of his problems last night. They were very self-inflicted problems for the former president last night. So a lot of things that happened last night, a lot of conversations yet to come. What will actually stir the electorate, especially that movable middle, especially in those swing states. We'll continue to watch all of that. We'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next.
1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Heather Peterson. KSL's top local story this hour. We're just hours away from tonight's critical debate between the top three candidates for governor. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera has more on how the state's debate commission curates the questions they believe are most relevant to Utahns.
Co-chair Becky Edwards informed Utah's Noon News their committee is dedicated to sourcing questions from various perspectives to ensure they address the concerns that matter the most to voters.
From people around the state, questions that are submitted live by students at the venue, as well as questions that we have come up with internally.
She highlighted the importance in utilizing the state's higher education institutions to bring an up-close and personal touch to how debates are done. Eric Cabrera, KSL News Radio.
And that debate will air live on KSL News Radio at 6 o'clock tonight. A district court is considering an emergency injunction of Amendment D this afternoon. This is the constitutional amendment questioning how much power the legislature has in altering citizen ballot initiatives. The court faces a tight deadline since ballots are supposed to head to the printer tomorrow. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Inflation appears to be cooling faster than expected. The Consumer Price Index shows a 2.5% annual rate increase, which is the lowest level that we've seen since February of 2021. It's lower than expectations, and it's data that could lead the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates later this month. Your money at this moment, the Dow is up 70 points, the NASDAQ up 305, S&P up 43. Coming up, a cold front moving in will send temperatures plummeting. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Winter is coming, but there's still time to replace those drafty old windows before the cold comes and drives up your heating bill. Just make one call and take advantage of the Advanced Window Products Fall Special. $2,500 off on 10 windows or more, and that's $2,500 off their already low factory direct prices because at Advanced Window Products, they're the factory. Your windows are built in their facility right here in Salt Lake City. You're buying local, and with their lifetime guarantee, you don't ever have to call some faraway state for help. Advanced Window Products is right here, proudly backing up their work. So make one call, save on your heating bill, and get a rebate from the energy companies. Advanced Window Products offers 0% financing. They can even give you amazing new windows with no money down. And don't forget, $2,500 off their factory direct prices, but you have to call now. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or go to advancedwindows.com.
The Utah RV Super Show, the premier RV event of the year, is back at the Mountain America Expo Center, Thursday, September 12th through Sunday, September 15th. Come see new 2025 models and special closeout pricing on all 2024 models. Bring a can of food for the Utah Food Bank and get $1 off per can, up to half off adult admission. Unplug from distractions and plug in to your family at the Utah RV Super Show. Discount passes at UtahRVSupershow.com.
Discover the best of senior living at Trio Orem and Trio South Ogden. Today's older adults aren't wrapping up their life's journey, they're seeking a new one. And Trio Independent Living is here to help them do just that. With a smart, modern, and connected lifestyle, residents cultivate relationships and maximize independence through signature programs like Prime Fit Wellness that bring living well and well-being to life. Welcome to the new age of senior living. Schedule your visit at leisurecare.com/Utah today.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We've had an accident in Clearfield, northbound Main Street at 650 North in Davis County. That's been blocking a right lane of travel. But if you're on any of the Valley freeways, you are good to go. The BYU Department of Dance presents World of Dance, featuring BYU's finest ballroom, contemporary ballet, Native American, and folk dance ensembles, September 19th and 20th at the Marriott Center. Tickets at BYUOnStage.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
There's a cold front moving in, which will send temperatures from a high of 92 today to 70 tomorrow. After that, temps will climb back up to the mid-80s by the weekend. Right now, it's windy out there and 88 degrees. I'm Heather Peterson from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, you're starting to get a little bit of that fall feeling in the air, and of course that means it is time for not football season. Supreme Court season is nearly upon us. By rule, they have to be in by the first Monday of October. Sometimes they start a little sooner. As they get towards the end of September, things start to percolate and work their way up in terms of what's coming. And so no better time than to turn to our favorite, Kelsey Dallas, Assistant Managing Editor for the Deseret News, and someone we always turn to when it comes to all things Supreme Court. And you can feel it in the air. I know you're also a football fan, Kelsey, but it is almost Supreme Court season.
Yes, definitely. Happy to be here and actually excited for the Supreme Court to be back in session.
You noted this week at Deseret.com that it's been quite a while since the Supreme Court heard a religion case. What is that like going into the new season or the new session of the Supreme Court? Will the streak end?
Well, the Supreme Court will have several opportunities to take up a religious freedom case, a case dealing with the First Amendment, but so far it hasn't, which means that the streak will extend at least until January or February, because there's no way at this point for the oral arguments to happen before then, even if they take up a case in early October.
Yeah, and so give us some of those other cases that you're kind of keeping your eye on that might bubble up during the course of this session.
Yes, there are three that I think are the most notable because they're about to be appealed to the Supreme Court, or they just have one last hurdle to clear before they'll be officially conferenced with the Supreme Court justices. One is called Landor versus Louisiana Department of Corrections. This is for some real nerds among us because it's a very, very small detail of religious freedom protections for people who are imprisoned. Basically, the question is, can you ask for relief based on that policy, even if you've already left prison? If there's nothing that can happen in the short term to help you, can you sort of win a victory based on like $5 of damages or just like the joy of winning? And it comes down to a former prisoner who had his dreadlocks shaved while he was imprisoned. That violated his faith. And so the question is, does he have any ability to sue based on religious freedom protections for imprisoned people?
Oh, fascinating. What other ones are you keeping your eye on rolling in that may bubble up, either those that are kind of on the appeal track there or any of the others that are kind of on the cusp?
There's one out of Florida that has to do with religious advertising. And anyone who follows religious freedom news will be familiar with this type of battle because it crops up almost every November or December, where faith groups, including Jewish groups, hope to advertise events dealing with major holidays on like buses, for example, like a big ad that's pasted to the side of a bus. And many government-run transit authorities will not allow religious messaging. So it's like you might be able to say, hey, this event is happening, but you can't say that it's for Hanukkah or for Christmas. You can't refer to Jesus. And so this deals with a Jewish group's frustration that they weren't able to talk about their Hanukkah event. And the question is whether it's fair for there to be a policy that specifically singles out religious speech and says that it can't be included. Does that violate First Amendment protections?
Fascinating stuff. Are there any other cases beyond the streak here that we're looking at in terms of religious cases going to the Supreme Court as we enter this new term of the Supreme Court? What else are you keeping your eye on?
One of the biggest cases that the Supreme Court has taken up that definitely will be hearing arguments has to do with a ban on gender-related health care, so things like hormone therapy or surgery for someone who identifies as transgender. That will be a familiar issue to people in Utah because Utah has a very similar law on the books as the one the Supreme Court is considering. So the justices have agreed to weigh whether you can have that ban on gender-related procedures for transgender young people if you allow other young people to get the same treatment. So there are young people who get hormone therapy and it has nothing to do with their gender identity. It's something health-wise. So they are definitely hearing that case, and there is certainly religious significance to the LGBTQ rights debate in general.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff as always. Anything else you're keeping your eye on just as we roll? I know there's a mountain of things that will happen between now and next June. But again, it's always interesting in prognostication season as we get ready to start the term. What else jumps out?
Well, if you're paying attention to the world of Washington, D.C., you might know that there is a protest happening, a prayer event, I guess you could call it, instead of a protest. It's happening outside the Supreme Court today. That's on behalf of a group called Apache Stronghold that is fighting for protection of sacred land. This case has been going on for years. I've covered it in the article this week, but I've actually covered it in, I think, the past 2 Supreme Court previews because it's just been waiting and bouncing around at the circuit court level. And so it will be appealed to the Supreme Court, I believe, today. And so that one is one that could make it on to the very end of this term. But this is a highly anticipated battle that people have been waiting for the Supreme Court to wade into for years.
Yeah. And why is it that this particular case, give us some of the uniqueness of that and why it has just kind of been floundering there for so long?
Well, in the world of religious freedom in general, there's always been difficulty addressing concerns with indigenous communities because the way that they practice their faith looks quite different than the way members of Christian groups, Jewish groups, Muslim groups practice. What does it mean to protect someone's religious freedom if protecting their religious freedom means that you have to protect thousands of miles of land in the West and not allow not only development like houses, but also not mining or certain types of agriculture? And so even people who have been super supportive of religious freedom protections in general sometimes stop short of protecting or acknowledging these claims that come out of Native American groups because it just feels impossible. Like, how could we continue to function in the way that we're used to functioning as a government, as a country, if we try to acknowledge all of these land protections? As far as why it's been trapped, it was heard by, I think, the Ninth Circuit, and then it was reviewed by the Ninth Circuit. There was a question of whether it was going to be reviewed again, and it was like, okay, no, they're finally going to appeal to the Supreme Court now. So it just had a much longer process in the lower courts than a typical case.
Great insight, as always. We are on the eve of the new term of the Supreme Court, 24-25, and just like football season, there's a lot to look forward to, a lot to anticipate, and Kelsey Dallas always breaks it down for us, and we look forward to having you back to give us the play-by-play along the way. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, that's Kelsey Dallas, Assistant Managing Editor for the Deseret News, and our eyes and ears and inside source when it comes to all things Supreme Court. We'll go ahead and step aside for a quick commercial break. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL Radio. We'll be right back. Stick around.
KSL offers the best daily newsletter in the state. It's the 3 things you need to know. Every weekday, we deliver quality and relevant content to your inbox. No ads, no spam, just the 3 things you need to know to be informed about the world around you. Subscribe today. Visit KSLNewsRadio.com or text the word inbox to 57500. That's inbox to 57500.
My wife and I always loved doing everything together. Jiu-jitsu, kayaking, and intimacy was always on point. It was around my early 30s when I noticed a downward trend. Watching a lot of TV, putting on weight, and just full of self-doubt. I had tried another men's clinic with disappointing results. It's the personalized treatment I receive at Revive Men's Health that has been the complete game changer for me. I've got my energy and motivation back. I'm feeling stronger than I did in my 20s, and it made me a much better husband to my wife.
I'm Eric Ramos, healthcare provider at Revive Men's Health. If you are always feeling tired or moody, have a difficult time sleeping, or decreased libido, you may be suffering from low testosterone.
Book your free T-check and exam at Revive Men's Health, Salt Lake City. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
A secure retirement just doesn't happen by accident. When that day comes, what's most important to you? Are you sure to have more money than month? What about unexpected medical costs? Do you want to leave something to the kids or the grandkids? I'm Jeff Jr. from Trajan Wealth, and I want you to know we specialize in these questions and can help make your retirement dream a reality with some of the highest guarantees in the business. Imagine getting up to a guaranteed 12% growth on your retirement income and up to a 30% bonus up front just for opening an account. If you have funds sitting idle in an old 401k or IRA, consider guaranteeing it to secure the peace of mind you deserve. Don't leave your financial security to chance. Take advantage of the highest guarantees I've seen in my career. Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600. Or visit us online at TrajanWealth.com.
Annuity guarantees are based on the claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
Hello? Hey, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. Did you know we've got you fully covered?
I've taken up beekeeping. I'm always covered.
I'm talking the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage at up to half the cost.
Same honey, half the work?
Exactly.
Sweet.
Just call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single line 1, 5, and 10 gig data plans with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plans offered by T-Mobile and Verizon January 2024.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, what are you waiting for? Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Dave and Debbie.
It's impossible to digest and consume all of the news that's now coming at us through either social media or through web pages or through the radio. Pick what is most impactful in your life and focus on that. And that's what Dave and I do every single morning. We pick those issues that are most important to our listeners and we boil it down so it's digestible. It's simple to understand.
I think we're trying to find the essence of the story. You know, you can't be an expert on all things, but that doesn't mean you can't be curious and really find out more and educate yourself and learn the complexities of an issue. But I think all of us start at ground zero on everything. Ask questions, show that curiosity.
And then if you need more research, you can always go to KSLNewsRadio.com and learn more.
Listen for Dave and Dejanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Heather Peterson. First, the top 3 candidates for Utah's governor will take to the debate stage tonight. That will air live on KSL News Radio at 6 o'clock. Second, a proposed constitutional amendment to change how ballot initiatives are handled in Utah is back in court today. The district court will consider whether to grant an emergency injunction. And third, it's September 11th, and there are events across the country and here in Utah remembering those who died. Right now, it's 88 degrees and windy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
As we march our way towards the first Tuesday of November, of course, big debate last night, and everything we've been seeing on the campaign trail and the campaign ads, it really seems to be a tale of two campaigns, two very different strategies trying to sway a very small sliver of potential voters out there. Vice President Harris and the Democrats are going all in on identity and kind of possibility focused approach. And, of course, the former president and the Republicans are really focused on security issues, the economy in particular. Stability, I think, is another big piece of that. We saw that play out a little bit on the debate stage last night, more so from the Harris campaign and less so from what the former president was chasing last night. So we want to get into that strategy component, identity versus security. I think this is interesting to look at. JT Young's an opinion contributor at The Hill, has a great piece at thehill.com. You can check that out on the 2024 election. And JT, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Boyd. It's great to be back and talking with you, and certainly on a somber day, 9/11. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and I appreciate you noting that. We were talking earlier in the program about even following a pretty raucous debate night with everyone cheering for who they wanted to cheer for, and a lot of pretty harsh words going back and forth, and yet in the morning, there they all are side by side and shoulder to shoulder, showing what our leaders can do when they choose to. And we should demand that they do that a little bit more often. But let's get into some of the strategies, some of the pieces that you pointed out in your piece so well, JT. In terms of the strategy, let's talk about the Harris campaign first, in terms of really this identity and possibility campaign that they're running. Describe that for us.
Okay. I think that we saw this with the Biden campaign. They wanted an identity campaign as well, and they wanted to identify President Trump as a convicted felon. And we really saw that didn't create traction. And I think that both the Biden campaign, when it was still running, and the Harris campaign now, are very aware that really they've already lost on the issues. If you just tick off the big things, the economy, foreign policy, inflation, crime, all of those, this administration is severely underwater. So they really are precluded from running on substance. And so I think, to the point that you were mentioning earlier, they are wanting to make this much more about identity. At first trying to identify President Trump as the convicted felon. You saw Vice President Harris doing that last night. She didn't stay on that for very long, but clearly the Democrats have embraced all the different identity groups that Vice President Harris represents, and for them, that is a much better contrast for them, because then I think they feel like they can make a rejection of her seem like a rejection of those groups, which of course it's not. Right. But that's what they're going for, and you could see that repeatedly last night as she was ticking off the different groups that she was standing with, and she went back to her middle class background. We saw her skewer President Biden, who was then a candidate on the debate stage, when she said that she was that little girl over school desegregation, obviously as a woman. All of these, over and over, you see the Democrats trying to resonate those messages.
Yeah, and so let's talk about the Republican side for a minute in terms of them wanting to get to some of those substantive things, particularly around the economy and security. I think the former president was distracted early and often from sticking to those particular points. But what's the strategy there? What's working? And where are they missing? missing it.
Well, I think to your point, Boyd, what we're seeing is that they take their focus off of what are the central issues that really are driving dissatisfaction, with this administration and a real desire for change. And obviously, Vice President Harris and her campaign are trying to act like, amazingly, that she can be a candidate for change when she's been in office with this administration for 3 3/4 years. And I think you're mentioning this as well from the debate last night, and it was frustrating to watch that President Trump did not stay on just the basics of security, whether it's the economy, crime, immigration, and just over and over stay on those messages. When they leave those messages, they are really playing to the strength of the other side's campaign.
Yeah. Great perspective, JT Young, an opinion contributor at The Hill. Great to have you back on the show. Again, you can check out JT's piece at thehill.com. JT, thanks for joining us today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Boyd.
All right. Again, that's JT Young. Great piece in The Hill. And again, as we kind of look back at the debate, a lot of the dust is beginning to settle. I don't think there were any massive gaffes or moments that are going to shift the course of this debate. I do think Kamala Harris will get a bit of a bump coming out of this. She did what she needed to do, importantly, for her campaign to be credible, to be plausible, to create that vision of, I can see that person sitting in the Oval Office behind the resolute desk. That was really the job to be done last night for Kamala Harris, and she did that. She also did a good job of avoiding the gaffes and the word salad and those things that have gotten her into trouble in the past. She avoided a lot of the specifics. She did talk about having plans, didn't get a lot of the details in terms of what those were, but she did a brilliant, masterful job of playing Matador and just baiting and leading the former president off topic and away from some of the issues that perhaps the former president could have done well on, or things that would have at least called into question some of the policies that a Harris administration might enact or what she has proposed in the past, and completely missed that, which comes full circle to what we've been saying leading up to the debate, and now we can say it after the debate. Debates are rarely won because you had the right strengths and you were brilliant. They're usually lost, and they're usually lost when one of the candidates does not control or manage their weaknesses, or their weaknesses become the dominant force in their behavior on the night. And we saw that in triplicate last night with former President Trump. His inability to be restrained, his inability to let something go, his inability to not respond to every slight and every dig, and to waste precious seconds in a debate chasing things that don't matter, as opposed to areas where he could have functioned from a position of strength. So regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, whether you were cheering for Kamala Harris or cheering for former President Trump, it's more important to say, what did we actually learn? I didn't learn anything new. Didn't learn anything new about former President Trump last night. And sadly, I didn't learn much about Kamala Harris either, other than she knows a lot about the former president and she likes to talk about it and at it, and spent a lot of time doing that last night. I wish both of them would have stopped talking back and forth to each other about things that really aren't relevant to most Americans. Who shows up at a rally, how long they stay, all the other sidebar conversations and issues that were had and that the moderators allowed to perpetuate throughout the hour and 46 minutes. But I wish they both would have just talked to the American people a little bit more about their vision. They each had a couple of moments like that. I will give each of them credit for that. But I will say for the most part, they missed the mark. And so you can debate over who won or lost, probably a winner by a nose to Kamala Harris. But who lost? I think it was the American people. I don't think they got what they deserved last night. And as a result, we should all take a look at, if the debate didn't convince you to vote for one candidate or the other, think about voting different. It could make a difference. We'll be back with hour number 2 of Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. Good afternoon. I'm Maria Chaleos. KSL's top story. It is breaking news. Evacuations are now underway in North Willow Canyon because of a wildfire in Tooele County. The South Willow fire is currently burning around 20 acres on private land close to Stansbury Mountain Range. The North Tooele Fire District says it's being fueled by heavy winds. Anyone in the area is being asked to leave immediately. KSL's top national stories from ABC News. We got an update today on the damage done so far by Southern California wildfires.
In a new count by firefighters, 39 homes and cabins have been destroyed by flames in the Mount Baldy and Wrightwood areas. What's called the Bridge Fire is now the largest active wildfire here in California. LA County Fire Chief Anthony Maroney.
Our priority remains the protection of life and structure and infrastructure defense.
Nobody has been seriously injured, and while conditions have greatly improved with lower temperatures and less wind, he says fires could still grow. Alex Stone, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Your money at this moment. Markets rallying in the final hour of trading. The Dow up 125 points at the close, ending at 40,861. S&P up by 59. The NASDAQ, the big winner, up by 2%, up 369 points. Big change coming in the forecast. We'll update your weather coming up next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Tired of ads interrupting your favorite news podcasts? Good news! Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Stay up to date on everything newsworthy with podcasts like The Daily, Up First, and 5 Things Uninterrupted at Amazon.com/ad-free. Just head to Amazon.com/ad-free to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
What was that? That is business phone bliss with the Ooma Cloud Phone System. It handles all our voice, video, and messaging needs.
You sound very...
Calm? I am. Ooma has everything I need to run my business more efficiently, like virtual receptionist, call routing, and video conferencing. And it starts at just $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Nice. Find your business calm at ooma.com/radio.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm energized by breaking news. First of all, because it's right now, and second of all, because in many cases the audience needs to know. There's no more important service that we can provide, and I find it critically important to get more details to the audience as quickly as possible. There's nothing more energizing than that for me. Not at all. The most important thing we do is breaking news. I am gratified that so many people listen to me every afternoon on KSL, but what they don't know is that there are so many people behind the scenes making it happen, checking on the traffic, answering the phones, making the calls, talking to the newsmakers. They're out in the street, into the field to get the raw information, and then putting it all together so that I can sit in front of a microphone and be a source of information every afternoon. But there are so many people who make it happen. That's what you don't know.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together. It's brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Ricky, what's happening on the roads?
It's pretty quiet out there. Right now, we have a crash-free drive on the Valley freeways and our main secondaries. Now, we had a little bit of busy traffic northbound I-15 approaching the I-80-201 junction, about 2100 south, but really not enough to even really slow traffic down. If you're just going to make that transition ramp to go to eastbound I-80, be aware it's been busy. The Utah RV Super Show is back September 12th through 15th at Mountain America Expo Center. Unplug from distractions and plug into your family at the Utah RV Super Show. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Today, more summer-like with a high of 92, but a big change tomorrow when the temperature drops by 20 degrees, the high only 70 degrees, and a 30% chance of showers. 88 degrees in downtown Salt Lake City. I'm Maria Shaleos from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Tim and Amanda.
One of the big differences, I think, between reading a story online and hearing it from us, Tim, is that, you and I are allowed to share a reaction. We need to be able to say, what in the world were they thinking? So that people listening will know. We feel it too. When we read a story that sounds ridiculous, we're right with you. It sounds ridiculous.
Well, we get caught up, I'm sure just like our listeners do sometimes, in death scrolling on social media. And fact-checking it on your own is tough. The great thing about tuning in every morning and starting your morning with us on KSL is you can count on the fact that when that information comes out of the radio in your direction, it comes from reliable sources.
It's already been fact-checked.
Right. And that's not always easy when you're getting it online. Finding who wrote it, when was it written, has it been updated with the current facts of the day that change sometimes minute to minute, not just day to day.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio. Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
But when it comes to campaigns, we always do refer to the old motto of "it's the economy, stupid." But sometimes we've got to be a little bit smarter about all of this. Inflation is an interesting component to the economics of it all. It's an economic indicator. And it's a powerful force, not just for shaping our wallets, but actually our minds and even our societies. So it's time to think again about what we think we know when it comes to the impact of inflation. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is time to think again about what we think we know when it comes to inflation and how it might even, as our guest termed it, breaks our brains. And it is difficult as we grapple with a lot of the inflationary pressures that we've experienced over the last little while. Understanding that, digging into that psychologically, socially, and all of those dimensions is a fascinating thing to look at and important to really understand. Our good friend Eric Boehm, of course, a reporter at Reason, covers economic policy, trade policy, and the elections, and just has a brilliant piece. I've been dying to have this conversation. Eric, welcome back to the show.
Hey, glad to be here, Boyd. Thanks for having me.
All right, so dive into this. We always look at inflation as an economic indicator and that kind of impact. What kind of psychological and social impact does it also have?
Yeah, of course. I mean, inflation is, as everybody is well aware after the last couple of years, it is, the measure of basically how much your money is worth relative to how much it used to be worth. This piece that I wrote for the magazine, it's in the latest edition of the print magazine, is kind of a deep dive into some of the psychological, social consequences that come along with periods of high inflation. And my thesis, my argument in the piece is that, not just, and the headline of the piece is "Inflation breaks our brains." It's not just that inflation makes us poorer, monetarily, but it tends to make people kind of poorer citizens too. Like, it makes everybody just, whether they're aware of it or not, kind of be a bit more on edge. There's, historical trends you can point to here too, various incidents, kind of throughout history where bouts of inflation triggered unrest and revolutions. And various types of things. But even when we don't get to something that extreme, I think it just helps explain some of the tightening, I guess, of everybody's kind of sense of politics in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and so I want to really dig in. The thing that caught me in your piece, and again, you can check this out in the print magazine and at reason.com, is that inflation does break us in a lot of ways. It makes us angry. It makes us a little more irrational. But unpack for us this idea that I think is the think again moment, and that is that it makes us poorer economically, obviously, but poorer citizens too. Explain that for us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's, again, if you go back and look at, I opened the piece by talking about a riot that happened in Moscow in 1648 because of a rise in the price of salt. I mean, there's sort of historical parallels that have been drawn between period of rough inflation in France right before the French Revolution. Obviously, maybe the most famous historical example is the hyperinflation in Weimar Germany that ultimately kind of contributed to the rise of Nazism, the rise of fascism in Europe. I think what to take away from these things is not necessarily that inflation causes people to go crazy or to become Nazis or anything like that, right? But that it just it makes people, I think, more willing to embrace extreme answers to some of the financial problems that they're facing. And I think it also it's that people, look for someone or something to blame, and politicians take advantage of that. And that's, certainly as was the case in Germany most famously. But I think even in less, extreme circumstances, you just have maybe it's immigrants, maybe it's the system, maybe it's the grocery stores, maybe it's the politicians themselves. But it just sort of triggers populist sentiments, and I think a kind of everybody feels poorer, and you want to know why that is. So there's some stuff we can talk about, some of the psychological studies that have been done too, which I think are interesting. But yeah, I think it just makes people more willing to embrace extreme political ideas that maybe they would dismiss when their times are better.
Yeah, and walk us through some of those psychological components, because I do think that's important for us to understand and recognize, both because, as you framed it, it does impact what a lot of politicians are willing to do or say, but it also is how we react and how our neighbors react to what's going on all around us.
Yeah, that's right. So I dove into a recent study from Harvard economist Stephanie Stansheva. She published a paper, I think this was last year, called "Why Do We Dislike Inflation?" It involved interviews with a couple thousand people, and she's just sort of surveying the way people feel about inflation. And she found exactly the thing we were just talking about here, which is that people kind of want to find something to blame. They want to find somebody to blame. It's different for different people. Sometimes it's Joe Biden. Sometimes it's greedy corporations. But you can kind of see that certainly reflected in our politics today. There's a lot of, I think, just trying to find somebody to blame for whatever uncomfortable, financial situation we've gone through in the last few years. And then, I think you combine that with the willingness of politicians. We see this especially on the right, but quite a bit on the left these days too, to try to blame problems on immigration, for example, or on greedy corporations, or on grocery stores. And that's obviously not what causes inflation. It's not immigration that causes inflation. It's not grocery stores that cause inflation. It's the government. It's the fact that you have more money, larger money supply chasing the same amount of goods. That's the sort of thing that's the root cause here. But it's easy to try to direct blame onto other factions. And I guess the other thing I'd add is that other studies that have been done have found that when people do better financially, when you get a pay raise, for example, most of the time people chalk that up to their own performance. People think, this is because I did something that was good and I deserve this money, and this is because of me. And when people lose money, lose a job, when inflation happens and your money is suddenly worth less than it was before, people look for external reasons to blame that rather than internal. And that's just a weird quirk of being human. That's just the way our brains operate. And but I think that contributes to this sentiment too in the culture, which is that something bad happened. Who can I blame for this?
Yeah. And so as we look at how we march forward with all of that, I think it's very interesting how the two political parties and the people at the top of the ticket in particular, how they talk about all of this. And they sort of tend to talk as if the American voters were economists rather than being consumers. They're not economists, and so even the good numbers don't really make a whole lot of sense if you are having a hard time buying groceries or gas or whatever it may be. So walk us through kind of the dynamics of how should we have a different conversation when it comes to what do we actually do to deal with inflation and get it in the right space so that the people can actually flourish.
Yeah. So one of the people that I talked to for the story made the point that the irony of the way people react to inflation is by embracing maybe oftentimes populist policies. And we saw this in the periods of inflation that happened in this country in the 1800s, for example. There were a series of booms and busts, and inflation would happen, and we didn't understand the money supply as well back then, and things were a bit more chaotic. And you would see these like periodic populist movements that would rise, along with periods of inflation. And you've kind of seen that again now in the last few years. Obviously, populism is back on the right and a bit on the left too. But the point that she made to me was that, the irony in all of this is that oftentimes the populist solutions are actually the worst ones if you're trying to get inflation under control.
Yeah.
What you need to do to get inflation under control is you need to constrain spending, you need to constrain the money supply, interest rates need to rise. People don't like it when interest rates go up. That makes people angry too. We view that as kind of like another form of inflation. But that's the thing you got to do. But you end up with, talking about tariffs, talking about anti-monopoly policies, talking about all sorts of other things that oftentimes don't address the root cause, and sometimes can actually make the situation worse, can actually make people worse off. So it becomes there's like a little bit of a feedback loop there politically.
Yeah.
So it's maybe you could take away from it that democracies are just not really all that well equipped to deal with inflation, and ultimately that's the reason the thing that we need to learn here, the ultimate lesson. Don't let inflation happen in the first place. Stay away from the risk of inflation, because once it's out of the bag, it's really difficult to get it back in.
Yeah, and especially love that phrase that the populist solution usually makes it worse. It sounds great. It's a good bumper sticker. It's all of those things. But we'll go all the way back to where you started your article, and any article that can start with a Russian peasant rebellion over salt in 1648 is going to be worth reading. So check that out in Reason Magazine this month. Also, you can see it at reason.com. Eric Boehm, reporter for Reason, fabulous piece. As always, thanks for helping us think again about what we think we know. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Boyd.
All right, it's Eric Boehm from Reason, and this one is really worth reading because it will get you thinking on a host of different fronts when it comes to inflation and how it does kind of break our brains a little bit. It makes us cranky and a little bit edgy and a little more likely to point fingers and place blame. But ultimately, it makes us poorer, not just economically. It makes us poorer citizens, too. I'm sure you didn't think about that when it comes to inflation, because we got to keep strong citizens that can create more heroic communities. And if we just go with the populist solution to what's going on with inflation, it'll make it worse, not better. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. 3 letters. BYU. BYU goes for win number 3.
3, that's a magic number.
BYU is on the road for Game 3.
It's the magic number.
Against the Pokes of Wyoming.
3 times 1.
BYU, Wyoming. Pre-game starts Saturday at 5.
That's a magic number.
And kickoff is at 7 on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
It is the perfect time to get into Hercules First Federal Credit Union and check out their Gold Tier Checking. This is the perfect time for you to do things just a little bit different when it comes to your economics. When it comes to your checking, Gold Tier Checking is going to allow you to earn points for travel on everyday spending. It is a free checking account, and not only that, you'll get a new promotional rate of 4.25% on your balance in your checking account. That's unheard of. You also earn points every time you use your debit card. You get points can be redeemed for cash back and travel, gift cards, and so much more. Also with Hercules First Federal Credit Union Gold Tier Checking, you also get free credit monitoring, no monthly fees. Most of all, you become part of their family and part of the solution of growing stronger together. Hercules has been doing this since 1946. You can find their locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, and Riverton. You can always find our friends at HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
Wrangle up some fun at Beatty Days 2024, Friday, October 25th through Sunday, October 27th. It's old-fashioned family fun with a chili cook-off, live music, bed races, a classic car show, cornhole and horseshoe tournaments, model railroads, a parade, food and craft vendors, contests for everyone, and a whole lot more. The fun is in Beatty, Nevada, this October 25th through the 27th. Visit BeattyNevada.org for the full schedule.
Get deeper insights on the news from inside sources.
Well, today the House of Representatives was supposed to vote on the spending package that would attempt to fund the government, at least for the next 6 months. It's not really doing their job, but it's at least doing it halfway, a half a year's worth. It has to be done by September 30th, we know, as the shutdown showdown continues. But in the end, no bill was brought to the floor of the House of Representatives. The GOP support for the bill had unwound just a bit. So I want to go back to something we covered yesterday about the entire process of funding our government. Congress's most important job, one of the few outlined in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, has become a bit of a spectacle and political theater, and nothing more. Representative Thomas Massey accused both Republicans and Democrats, equal opportunity offender, we love that, but he charged his colleagues for engaging in the fake political theater that we're trying to elect thespians now in some drama that isn't taking us anywhere. Take a listen.
Can we be honest with the American people about what's going on here? This is political theater. I'm going to call out both sides right here. It's all posturing, it's fake fighting. We all know where it ends up. This is Groundhog Day. I don't care if the Democrat is the speaker or Republican is the speaker. We always get a CR in September, and then we get an omnibus. Sometimes there's a twist on that. We might get the omnibus before Christmas, but if we're not good, it comes after Christmas. But that's what's going to happen. And in the meantime, it's political theater. It's good theater. We've got great writers. I wish they'd just come up with a new plot. It's the same plot every fiscal year. What should we be doing? It's already been discussed. We should have done 12 separate bills. But again, whether Democrats are in control or Republicans are in control, we never do the 12 separate bills. Why do we always spend at least as much as we did last year, and why do we never cut spending? It's because Democrats want to grow the welfare state, and Republicans want to grow the military-industrial complex. And we're eventually going to get together, and they're both going to go up. I guarantee it. And both parties are just fine letting the bureaucrats do their thing, which should be our thing, according to Article 1, Section 8 in the Constitution. We are empowered with these things. Most important of the things we do is the funding, and that's the big lever we have. That is the tool that we have, is the funding. Why are we funding things we don't like? We don't have to. Well, it's because we're addicted to spending. And this doesn't do anything about the addiction at all.
So many things to unpack there. It is political theater. What should Congress have done? Their job. Article 1, Section 8. It's right in there. It's one of the few things that Congress has to do. And yet they have not been doing it. Why? As Representative Massey called out both sides of the aisle, and I appreciate this, someone in Congress in a committee hearing calling out his side as well as the other side of the political aisle to say we're all addicted to spending, and so we're going to keep doing it. We'll have these fights, we'll have all of this drama, and then we'll spend, and we'll actually spend more than we did last year, even though we spent way too much last year, and continue to get beyond the $36 trillion in debt. He says, but that's the way we're doing it. Why? Because everyone is addicted to spending in the end. Now, Representative Massey was not finished, and I'm glad he was not finished because there are a few other things that he needed to point out, and we're going to bring them to you. He brought up the fact that this 6-month CR, so continuing resolution, what the proposal is coming out of the Republicans in Washington is a 6-month extension of the current spending, which gets us to March 28th of next year to ensure that there are no cuts to anything. Take a listen.
You know, a couple years ago, or a summer and a half ago, I suppose now, we did something where we allowed the debt limit to be increased. But as a condition of that, we said if you do a CR that lasts past April 30th, everything's going to get cut 1%. And that to me, seemed like at least a little tinge of fiscal responsibility was creeping in. But now I notice that this CR, instead of going 1 year and giving us time to do the 12 appropriations bills, is going to go 6 months. Now, let me tell you what's going to happen because this goes 6 months. Number one, it ends in March 28th, on March 28th. Well, the automatic cuts happen on April 30th if the CR went past that. So that is exactly why the Speaker chose a 6-month CR, is so we don't have even the chance, a threat to this town, it's a threat of a 1% cut. We don't want to even, this is like T-ball. The 1% cut is on the tee and Republicans won't even swing at it. So instead, we're going to do a 6-month CR instead of a 1-year CR. That sets up another crisis next spring where we can do another pretend fight sometime around March. And that fight it'll be the same fight regardless of who wins the presidency and who's in charge of the Senate and the House. And we're basically going to get pretty much the same result. But that's 6 months from now. In the meantime, we can kick the can down the road. All of these things that we've exposed and all of these hearings are going to continue to get funded.
Wow. He is so spot on in all of that, that this is going to kick the can down the road to the end of March. Why the end of March? Because they want to have enough time to get it done before April 30th, which is when a very minuscule thing would happen, a 1% cut. Now, if you were asked to cut your family budget 1%, you'd figure that out. If you were running a business and you needed to cut 1%, you'd figure that out. The United States Congress on both sides, Thomas Massie called them all out and said, doesn't matter who wins the House, doesn't matter who wins the Senate, doesn't matter who's in the White House, we're going to have the same spending because everyone's addicted to it, and no one is willing to even imagine the possibility of cutting it by a measly, minuscule 1%. Now, finally, he addresses something really important. You're going to see this play out over the next 4 weeks. This thing called the SAVE Act, which is about making sure people have proof of citizenship before they register to vote, that they have attached it to this spending bill. I have problems with that as a general rule, but he really says, Representative Massie, again, a Republican, says this is just a distraction because this has no chance of actually becoming law.
But wait, there's a bright, shiny object on this CR. I've never seen one of these. I have never seen a bright, shiny object attached to one of these must-pass bills. Oh, wait, no. It actually happens. There always is. A bauble, if you will. A little something to get excited about. This SAVE Act. It's going to save us all, right? And by the way, this is good political theater. I do like this part of it, that we're going to see almost every Democrat cast a vote so that illegals can vote in our elections. I mean, that's pretty clever on the part of our speaker to set that up, make you all take that vote. But here's what he's going to do after you take that vote. He's going to take it off. The bright, shiny object goes away. It's Lucy and the football again. And the American public is all revved up. Yeah, we're going to get to save it. We're going to save these elections. We're going to stop the illegals from voting. Really? How are you going to do that in like 6 weeks? I think they're already registered if they're going to vote. Some of them probably already voted. This SAVE Act ain't going to save anything. And particularly because it ain't ever going to become law. It's a false promise to get all the Republicans half pregnant. And then you're going to get fully pregnant by the end of September when you vote for this CR. I hate to break this to you. I mean, the Democrats already know this. I'm not telling you anything special. I hate to break it to the Republicans. You ain't getting the SAVE Act. It is not going to stay on this bill. Why? Because we're going to cave. We're going to cave. Is it a fight worth having? Absolutely, it's a fight worth having. Make those Democrats say they want illegals to vote. Make them take that vote as many times as you can. And then make them go to the ballot box in November. But that's what it is political theater, folks. We all know where it ends up. We've seen it. I've been here 12 years. I've seen it 12 times. I refuse to be a thespian in this failure theater.
That was Thomas Massie. It is, what are we really electing? Are we electing members of Congress, people to represent us, or are we just hiring really good thespians as part of a tragic theatrical performance in our nation's capital? We have to get to the real conversation. And today, no real conversation happened. No bill came to the floor. No debate was had. And so here we are with September the 30th marching towards us, and it will come. We'll continue to have the fake fight and the false choice until someone decides to actually get the job done. We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next here on KSL News Radio. We'll be right back. Stick around.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. Good afternoon. I'm Maria Chaleos. KSL's top story this half hour. Tonight, Governor Spencer Cox, Brian King, and Robert Latham will hit the debate stage to debate. King told David Dujanovic what he wants people to know after tonight.
It's working middle-class Utahns, people who are struggling to get into homes, people who are struggling to make ends meet. That's my first priority.
Cox has yet to say what he wants to highlight, but in the past he's focused on things like kids and social media and disagreeing better. You can hear the debate live on KSL News Radio starting at 6. KSL's top national story from ABC News. Hurricane Francine is making its way through the Gulf of Mexico, headed for a likely landfall later today. ABC News Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z has details.
We've got this Category 1, 90-mile max sustained winds hurricane coming at the Louisiana coast. Landfall should be tonight. Kind of slowly makes its way up into Tennessee. So anybody really, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, you need to be paying attention as well as Louisiana.
Evacuation orders have been posted for some low-lying areas. Stocks making a comeback in the final hour of trading, with the Dow ending up 125 points to end at 40,862. S&P up by 59, the NASDAQ up by 370 points. Summer temperatures coming to an end. A complete update of the forecast coming up next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is a serious heart condition. Some symptoms include being short of breath, feeling tired, or having dizziness or chest pain. My HCM impacted how I felt and what I could do. So I asked my cardiologist about treatment advances that gave me new options. That conversation was big for me. That's why I'm working with Bristol Myers Squibb to raise awareness about HCM and to help others like me. Talk to your cardiologist today and visit hcmrealtalk.com to learn more.
Sponsored by Bristol Myers Squibb.
When might you be buzzed? When you suddenly love everything.
You guys, I love this song. I love these nachos. I love our kickball league. Oh, I love this guy. What's your name? You know what I'd love? A ride when it's time to head out.
If you see a buzzed warning sign, call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
I love your car. Is this real leather?
This is Derek Overstreet, the New Millennium Group, and host of Stop Working and Start Living Radio. If you're close to or in retirement and you don't have a tax plan, call us right now, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Listen, our country's been spending like never before, and the tax bill is coming soon. If you need an income tax strategy and a financial plan that will get you through the rest of your life, give my team a call, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. If you want an investment plan that allows you to keep more of your gains and pay less taxes, give us a call, 888-999-6370. My team specializes in the type of plan that will get you retired 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible. So, get a no-cost tax analysis by calling 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. My team is standing by now.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call.
If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for up to half the cost. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single line 1, 5, and 10 gig data plans with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plans offered by T-Mobile and Verizon January 2024.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Right now, I'm looking at a pretty quiet drive. Valley Freeway traffic seeing a delay-free commute in progress for now. And our secondaries, well, we do have some busy traffic on State Street northbound going from Draper to Sandy, but overall pretty quiet out on the roads. The BYU Department of Dance presents World of Dance, featuring BYU's finest ballroom, contemporary, ballet, Native American, and folk dance ensembles. September 19th and 20th at the Marriott Center. Tickets at BYUOnStage.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Enjoy the summer-like temperatures. They are coming to an end. Today's high 92. Tomorrow, though, the high only 70 degrees with a 30% chance of showers. Right now, 90 degrees. I'm Maria Chaleos from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at KSLNewsRadio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We focused a lot today on domestic issues here in the United States. Obviously, they get front and center as we march towards an election in November. But as I always say, it is always nice to talk about domestic issues and even be a little myopic. Every president of the United States wants to be solely focused on domestic issues and what's happening at home. But then the world happens, and that's where everything changes. India is projected to become the world's third largest economy by 2030. No signs of slowing down. As India works its way into the world power conversations, the relationship with the United States could be one that doesn't just shape what happens between India and the U.S., it could shape much of the world conversation for the next 50 years and beyond. Aparna Pandey is the director of the Initiative on the Future of India and South Asia at the Hudson Institute, has a beautiful piece in The Hill talking about that relationship and how it could well shape the 21st century. And Aparna, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So give us a sense in terms of the relationship and kind of where we are today in terms of the U.S.-India relationship, and then we'll look at what lies ahead.
So the last 3 decades, especially the last 1 decade, the India-U.S. relationship has really grown. The economic relationship, the bilateral ties are around $200 billion in trade. There's a defense and security partnership. India is at the heart of the U.S. national security strategy, especially the Indo-Pacific strategy to push back and counter Chinese expansionism. And there's a very strong people-to-people relationship with India, both on the front of a very large Indian-American diaspora, Indians in almost every aspect of American life, and the fact that India and the U.S. share common values. India is the world's largest democracy. It is a secular, pluralistic, progressive country like the United States, and both of them share values as well as interests.
Those shared values, I think, have been so interesting to see how that plays out as the world's largest democracy. Most people don't think of it that way. Talk to us a little bit about the dynamic. You mentioned this as an alternative to what's going on and countering China's aggression, both in the region and around the world.
So 3 points. One, India has increased because of India's growing economic power and potential. The median age in India is 28 years. There are about 600 million young Indians who are part of the Indian labor force. So American companies that are seeking an alternative to China and Chinese manufacturing can move right next door to India, where there's a massive labor pool, and so that's the first advantage of India: the economic potential, the demographic potential, the very large number of engineers, doctors, and just plain labor force. The second part is that India is and has been an American partner, but is not a security ally. However, India and the U.S. agree on what is the key threat facing both countries, which is the rise of China. India has fought China. India and China have a long-standing border dispute and a dispute about, who's going to be the main country in Asia and in the Indian Ocean in the coming years. And so India's, sort of rivalry with China is independent of, what the U.S. Sort of vision is for the world, but it aligns with the American vision. And why does it matter? It matters because unlike American security allies, India is not asking the U.S. for economic assistance, security assistance. It's not asking for any treaty or any sort of, security pact. What it is saying is sort of, China is a threat for me, China is a threat for you. We'll both push back against the Chinese threat on the economic and the defense arena, and our policies will align.
Yeah.
And the third is the more sort of, India has, because of the during the Cold War, I'm sure you recall, India was part of what was called the non-aligned world. Today, that's called the Global South. A large number of countries in the world which are not part of either the American alliance or the Chinese camp. And in these countries, India has a very strong presence, developmental as well as leverage.
Yeah.
And so that helps the U.S.
No
and its policy.
Yeah, no question about that. There's so many fascinating things to explore in this relationship and dynamics. You pointed out in your piece everything from what's happening in space in terms of some amazing things that I don't think most people understand there. You also talked about that global security, multilateral architecture, and a host of other things that just create a really unique opportunity there if someone's willing to step in that in a significant way. Aparna, I want to have you back on the program so we can dig even deeper into all the nuances of all of this. I think it's fascinating, and I think you hit it right on in your piece in The Hill, that this alliance, this relationship between the United States and India could well be the driving force, the major shaper of the 21st century. Aparna, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Again, that's Aparna Pandey, Director of the Initiative on the Future of India and South Asia at the Hudson Institute. And I found myself just going over and over some of the pieces that Aparna put into this piece, talking about everything. I didn't really think about it in terms of the 4 countries that have actually landed on the moon. India is one of them. They have 124 active satellites circling the globe. They have a budget of about $74 million to do that, which is smaller than a lot of Hollywood movies, Aparna pointed out in her piece. So a lot to talk about, a lot to dig into. We'll have Aparna back to dig a little deeper and get beyond the headlines as it relates to India and the United States relationship. We're going to step aside for one last break. We're going to come back with some thoughts on 9/11, including my conversation with a person who may have had one of the most difficult jobs after 9/11. You don't want to miss this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
In a world where ugly siding, leaky gutters, and inefficient windows are sapping homeowners of their will to live, one company must save us all. This year, join RGS Exteriors as it embarks on a mission to eliminate outdated home exteriors, one Utah home at a time. Every plank of old, ugly siding must be replaced. Every leaky gutter must be eradicated. Every inefficient, energy-sapping window must be vanquished. Once and for all. Begin your epic remodeling quest by calling RGS Exteriors for a free estimate. Discover how a heroic team of experts will save your siding, gutters, or windows for a fair, no-nonsense price. Call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or journey online to rgsexteriors.com. RGS Exteriors, coming soon to a home near you.
Join Lagoon's maintenance and construction team for the most thrilling job around. Lagoon is looking for exceptional ride technicians, skilled carpenters, electricians, plumbers, and more. Lagoon offers excellent training programs with amazing career opportunities. These positions are both full-time and year-round. Apply online today at lagoonpark.com/jobs. Join the Lagoon team and help us maintain the fun. Must be 18 years of age or older to apply.
Do you have an IRA or 401k? It's natural to think of this as being your money, right? But remember, you still have to pay taxes when you withdraw this money in retirement. And you could be paying a lot more in taxes on these accounts than you know. A lot more. Learn the strategies that can help you reduce or eliminate your taxes in retirement. Don't miss a special edition of Retirement Solutions Radio this Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Right here on KSL News Radio 102.7.
Just the other day, I was talking with a new acquaintance, and I mentioned I had let go of 70 pounds of fat weight with the help of my friends at Soda Weight Loss. And I showed him a picture of me from this same week last year. He said, "Wow, you don't even look like the same person anymore. You look younger now." One of my relatives, who I hadn't seen in person in a couple of years, said I look taller now. Well, I'm not alone. Clients at Soda, which is spelled S-O-T-A, look and feel 10 years younger when they let go of the fat. I'm living proof of this, but you can see for yourself by going to SOTAweightloss.com. That's SOTAweightloss.com. Check out the thousands of before and after pics. While you're there, click on the Request a Nutritionist callback. And within minutes, you'll be talking with someone who truly wants to help you get in the best shape of your life. You want the fastest and most permanent results? It's not with injections, drugs, or pills, and it's not with fad diets, because you almost always gain the weight back once you stop. I got rid of my excess weight in just 5 months, and now 6 months later, I'm still right where I want to be. Get started now and look great for the holidays with SOTAweightloss.com, because Soda is state-of-the-art.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
At the UPS Store, we understand the importance of a first impression. That's why we're here to help you put your best foot forward and be unstoppable with our printing services. With high-quality paper stock options, banners, business cards, venues, and more, we make sure your small business stands out and your message reaches the masses. After all, we're the one-stop prints that pop store. Most locations are independently owned. Product, services, prices, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable. Come into your local store today and get your print on.
Don't you love this time of year? Fabulous fall colors amongst the Red Rock Views and Cedar Breaks and Dixie National Forest. You should take a drive where you will no doubt enjoy 4 scenic highways, connecting you to the most amazing fall colors you'll ever see. Time to put the U back in Utah, because it's all about the journey you create. This fall, see you in Cedar City. Start your journey at this year's Utah Shakespeare Festival, now through the fall, featuring 4 incredible plays. Do you like nature? Take a hike, go mountain biking, or OHVing in Bryan Head. You'll enjoy many fun fall events, like the charm of an organic farmer's market. And be sure you include a visit to the best pumpkin patches in the West. You will definitely get it all this fall in Cedar City, putting the U back in Utah and Cedar City. To plan your journey and for Cedar City's updated fall color report, activities, and cool foodie places to go, visit cedarcity.com. cedarcity.com.
Gear up for your hunting season with the Shields Hunting Sale event going on now through September 15th. Take advantage of great deals, like getting a free blind bag and gun case with the purchase of a Benelli Super Black Eagle, 40% off the First Light Cypher collection, $100 off Lacrosse Optifade Alpha Evolution boots, and discover so many more in-store and online. Fill your bag to the limit on savings this hunting season, now through September 15th at Shields or shields.com.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Some time ago, I had the opportunity of interviewing Kenneth Feinberg, who I think had one of the most difficult tasks following 9/11. It was his job to put a monetary value to the life of each life that was lost that day. from the person working in the corner office of a big hedge fund to the person who was working security or cleaning the bathroom stalls. And it was a fascinating conversation, and I can't imagine a task more difficult. But I wanted to go back to this because the book that Kenneth Feinberg wrote after that, it's called What is Life Worth? And it gave me such a unique perspective of how we look at all of these things. And so Kenneth Feinberg first explained to me how he got this job of assessing the value of a life after 9/11.
13 days after the 9/11 attacks, Congress passed a law. And the law simply said anyone who died, the surviving family members of one who died on 9/11, the airplanes, the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, or anyone who survived but was physically injured as a result of the terrorist attacks, could voluntarily enter a special fund and receive compensation funded entirely by the public taxpayer, public money from the U.S. Treasury. You didn't have to. If you'd rather, you could go litigate in a court against the World Trade Center, the airlines, the security guard companies, the Massport and the Port Authority of New York. You could do that. But if you'd rather short-circuit all of that and come into a special fund, waive your right to sue. I'll take money from Feinberg and sign a release. I will not sue. That was the option. And for 33 months, that program was in place.
Kenneth went on to say that the hard part for him in all of this was the emotion on one hand, but you have to recognize that every person who perished in 9/11, their surviving family members received a different amount of compensation based on what the victim would have earned over their life, plus pain, suffering, and emotional distress. So the formula is so extraordinary to think about. The CEO in the corner office on one of the upper floors of the World Trade Center versus the person that was the security guard or cleaning the toilets. And yet it doesn't factor in their life, what they're doing, the impact they're having on community and family, and the difference they're making in the world. And so part of the challenge for Kenneth was all of the emotion around it. Listen to what he had to say.
When somebody goes to court in Salt Lake City or Boise, Idaho, or New York City, it's one person suing a company or an insurance company. It's one-on-one. In 9/11, I had almost 3,000 death claims and another 2,300 physical injury claims. And you know this, Boyd, everybody counts other people's money. So if I'm awarding $2 million to a victim who died in the World Trade Center and his wife or husband or whoever filed the claim, Mr. Jones, your wife died and you're going to receive tax-free from the taxpayer $2 million. What do you mean? My next-door neighbor's getting $3 million. What do you have against my husband? You never even met him. And what do you have against my wife? You never even met her. And I mean, that was what was really problematic and challenging for me, was the emotion.
That emotion got even more intense as those days went on. And again, a lot of that comparing why this person is worth this much, why someone else gets less. It's an incredible, the mathematics of it all, the mental gymnastics of it all, really led Kenneth to share with me what he learned in this whole process about empathy.
You learn that if you want to really empathize with victims in private, in confidence, the less you say is the better. Lady comes to see me, 26 years old, sobbing. Mr. Feinberg, I lost my husband. He was a firefighter at the World Trade Center, and he left me with our two children, 6 and 4. Now, you're going to provide me $2.6 million in compensation, tax-free. I want it in 30 days. I said to her, Mrs. Jones, why do you need the money in 30 days? This is public money. It may take 60 days or 90 days. No, 30 days. I said, why? Why? I'll tell you why, Mr. Feinberg. I have terminal cancer. I have 10 weeks to live. My husband was going to survive me and take care of our 2 children. Now they're going to be orphans, and I have got to get this money while I have my faculties. I have to set up a trust with a guardian. I don't have a lot of time. Well, we ran down to the Treasury. We accelerated the payment. 8 weeks later, she died.
That's an extraordinary story. Finally, I asked Kenneth Feinberg the ultimate question. What is the value of a life?
The value of a life in America, this is very important. The value of a life in America is a calculation, dollars and cents. What would the victim have earned but for the disaster, and some amount for pain and suffering? Do not value lives as human beings by taking into account things like dignity, love, loyalty, integrity, charity. A rabbi or a priest can look at those issues. But if you're going to be in a courtroom and in a court of law, the stockbroker or the banker will receive more from the judge and jury than the waiter, the busboy, the cop, the fireman, or the soldier. That's the way it is. That's the way our system has always been. And it doesn't sit well with many people who feel that it's unfair. But when I work in these horrible tragedies, I try to avoid words like fair and just. What's fair and just about any of this? It's mercy. That's what it is. It's mercy. And I think that's the only way you can look at this.
Fascinating conversation that I had with Mr. Feinberg. Again, he had the unenviable task of working through, following 9/11, over 3,000 deaths, and those claims, 2,300 that were injured in various ways, and what they were able to get. Again, this was public money, taxpayer money that was put into this pool, and then his job was to divvy that up. And to me, that is a most interesting calculation. So he talked about the person who was working as the CEO in the World Trade Center that day. The calculation, according to the country, is lifetime earning plus pain and suffering. And so that CEO, their survivors, would receive so much more than the person working the security job or working janitorial services. And those calculations don't take into effect some of the things that Mr. Feinberg learned along the way, that it doesn't take in dignity or integrity or charity. I mean, could it have been that CEO in the top office there at the World Trade Center, maybe they had let their family fall apart. They'd let their teenagers become narcissists and drug dependent. And maybe that person working in the janitorial services that day were working that extra job so they could put their daughter through college and med school. And maybe she would be the one to find a cure for cancer or to just make a difference, providing medical services in her community. And so the calculations when it comes to the courtroom and when it comes to what takes place in this country is a cold calculation. Lifetime earnings plus pain and suffering. So as Mr. Feinberg said, it's not fair. It's not even just. And so the real question that I think we have to get to in moments like this as we reflect on 9/11 is not just what is the value of a life. More importantly, we actually have to get to the more important part of the conversation, which is what is the worth of a soul. And so as you continue on through the day today, as you remember 9/11 and where you were and many of the emotions and the great unity that came to the nation following such a disaster and such heartache and suffering in the country, let's get back to the real calculations, the calculations that add up and matter a whole lot more than just a check coming from the government, because that's just a calculation, as Mr. Feinberg pointed out. This is one of the most fascinating interviews I've done over the years because it led me to not just consider what is the value of a life based on your professional identity, but more importantly, what is the worth of your soul in terms of divinity? That's a conversation we got to get to in this country. That wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, as you go out into the world, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. 90 degrees. It's windy in Salt Lake City. We have bad air, KSL's top story. The sky looks strange and hazy this afternoon. The color is off. The mountains are disappearing and it smells like smoke. There are 3 new fires burning in northern Utah today, one in Tooele County, one in Box Elder, and another burning right above Lagoon in Farmington Canyon. KSL meteorologist Devin Mashuli joins us live in the studio. Devin, is this smoke we're seeing coming from these new local fires?
No, they're actually coming from 3 fires in Southern California. So we have a cold front coming in from our northwest. So as a result, it's making our winds very strong from the southwest. So we are literally getting a direct flow from the Southern California fires up along I-15 into our valley right now. So our air quality is degraded in the unhealthy category as far south as St. George, then all the way as far north as Ogden. And it's going to continue to move northward before that cold front comes through. Now, the cold front's going to switch wind direction. So now winds are going to be coming from the northwest by tonight into the overnight hours. And as we know, we have fires ongoing in Idaho and Oregon. So unfortunately, we have another band of smoke that is going to move in for tomorrow in northern Utah from the northwest. So really, every part of Utah tomorrow is going to see the hazy, the smoky skies, and degraded air quality from these 2 fires or 2 sections of fires. And I can only imagine locally the